You know, whenever I hear the term child refugee, I'm instantly suspicious because of the child refugees we let in who quite obviously were not children. Former Cabinet Minister Nicky Morgan warns Tories risk nasty party image over child refugee scheme. Listen, the Tories have always had the image of being the nasty party, going right back to Thatcher Milk Snatcher. Okay, they have always been the nasty party. This is not a new reputation for them, and it's not one that's going to change anything about anyone's opinions about them. This is only going to confirm the biases who already hate them, and it's only going to make the people who like them ignore the people who hate them even more. Former Cabinet Minister Nicky Morgan has warned that the Conservatives risk being seen as mean-hearted party following reports that it cancelled a scheme to help lone child refugees. Yes, it did. And do you know what's really awful? There are children in sweatshops in Indonesia that they're not even vaguely helping. There are children starving in Africa. They're not doing anything. There are children in South America being trafficked as sex slaves. And the Tories do nothing. Oh, what's special about these child refugees? Oh, they're the ones you care about. Right, okay. You don't care about the other ones, you care about these ones. And, let's be honest, are they even children? I mean, there's a few 5 o'clock shadows that would suggest not. In words reminiscent of Theresa May's famous speech warning people how people believe the Tories were the nasty party, Miss Morgan said the Conservatives' approach to child refugees goes to the heart of the kind of party we want to be. Yeah, the kind of party who maybe defines their terms correctly. I mean, I don't define a child as someone over 16. That's just not my definition of a child. Or sorry, 18 I think it is, the legal majority. Although I think legal consent is 16? I don't know. But 18 then, say. And yet some of these refugees who are being touted as children were obviously not younger than 18. So what we have is a case of, I mean, I don't want to say fake news, but the term fucking lies might be more applicable. And why is it done? Oh, because it makes people feel better. Well, I'm sorry. We've come to the point where we can't afford to be accommodating people's feelings in the face of the reality of what's happening to our country. And the West in general. Christ. The working classes can't afford to pay for your feelings anymore. That's the problem. So, the article from the ex-Education Secretary comes amid outrage at the government's decisions to limit to 350 the number of unaccompanied refugee children welcomed to the UK under a scheme that was meant to help 3,000. We get 300,000 new immigrants into this country every year. Any that we take is too many at this point. And it's not about where they come from. It's just about the numbers. I've stressed this multiple times. It's just about the fucking numbers. Yes, it sucks that someone else has let these children down. It sucks that someone else is responsible for them being refugees. And it sucks that every single fucking country they had to pass through, and no, refugees are only supposed to be entitled to actual refugee status in the nearest safe country, which we are not, unless France is currently going through some sort of terrible civil war with ISIS, which, okay, that's not that unrealistic, but so far, France isn't declared to be a country in a state of war, and there is absolutely nothing compelling us to take in any refugees at all under international law. This is just people going, well, isn't it the right thing to do? Well, it was the right thing to do back in the 90s, and then in the 2000s, and then the 2010s, and now it's getting to the point where it's not the right thing to do. It ends up causing more problems than it solves. Unfortunately, the people who made the situation as it is are going to be the ones who have to be held responsible. Yes, of course, we shouldn't let these children starve. We should try and reunite them with their parents. I mean, where the fuck... What kind of parent allows their child to travel to a foreign continent in the hopes that people there will be nice to them? And isn't that just a testament to how amazing the West is? They didn't go to China looking for help. They didn't go to India. They didn't go anywhere else. They didn't go to Africa. No, they came here. Because if they went somewhere else, there's a good chance that something bad would have happened to them, isn't there? It says a lot about the West and a lot about the rest of the world. And now we're sitting here flagellating ourselves over the fact that we have enough problems. And that's basically what this comes down to. We have enough problems. You as an individual, could send money to a charity. There are loads of charities. Loads of charities trying to help refugees and refugee children get stuff done. If you as an individual want to contribute to these charities, you could even travel over there and donate your actual time and labour to helping these people. But you don't. It's easier to whine at the government. I mean, whining at the government to do something that is going to affect people who weren't whining at the government and don't want this to happen is as good as you doing something personally, isn't it? I mean, what happened to, like, charitable missionary work? What happened to these people who actually claim they give a shit about this, getting off their fat fucking asses and going and doing something about it themselves? Why can't you do this? Why can't you change things personally? Why do you have to ask someone else to do it for you? But listen to this. In her Conservative Home piece published on Monday, Ms Morgan highlighted an email she received from one constituent who said the Tories seemed hell-bent on closing our doors to migrants in desperate need of our humanity. We are not the saviours of the world. We are not the white saviours of the world. They are not children or worse, animals. They are capable of managing their own affairs and navigating their own futures. And yet, unfortunately, you get rough patches on that sea, and obviously they're in a very, very bad one at the moment. And we should do what we can to help them settle their affairs back home so these people can stay in their countries where they belong and then can legally immigrate to other countries using the legal systems already in place. Why this is controversial is beyond me. No, you don't get the right to simply march en masse to another continent and say, you know what, now we're here, you should let us in. I mean, we've come all this way, we're right here and we're hungry. Well, of course you're fucking hungry. You've just travelled 1,000 miles unnecessarily without permission. This isn't unclaimed land or anything. This, just amazing. Just like, you know what, why doesn't just, whoever the fuck they want, just come on, we don't need to vet you. It doesn't matter how many of you are. Just come on. Fuck off. Fuck off. This is taking advantage of the goodwill of the public who haven't got much goodwill left. I mean, you realise that we've had Brexit, we've had Trump, we're going to get Le Pen, and at worst, I think we're going to get Wilders. And I'll tell you what, if anyone's actually read Wilders' manifesto, it's pretty fucking fascist. I'm not joking. It is actually legitimately like a modern fascist manifesto. People keep going on about Donald Trump being a fascist. He's not a fascist. He's a patriotic nationalist. He's not a fascist. Wilders is a fascist. I'm not joking. Like, literally, I should have got it up to go through it, to go along with this. But this is what... the Netherlands probably isn't going to get him. So there's that. But Le Pen is probably going to get it. And if France votes to leave the EU, that's the end of the EU. So this kind of browbeating, moralising at the expense of other people who are having problems, real problems, isn't going to work. It's got to stop. It's got to stop. And this is just one great guilt trip at the Conservatives. How dare you do things that the British public would like you to do? Well, that's the state of the country at the moment, I'm afraid. The left made it this way. And this person isn't even a leftist. She's a Conservative. This is... I mean, they don't seem to understand the fabric of society is coming apart. They don't seem to understand that too many people with too many different backgrounds from too many areas of the world that have very strong cultural and ideological agendas, I mean, you can't live in a plural society like that. You can't live in a plural society with totalitarians. That's just not the way it is. Have you not noticed how we've got millions of Hindus and Sikhs and Chinese in this country, and they're not a problem at all? No one complains about these people because they immigrate legally. They go through the proper processes, the official channels. They accept when they've been rejected and they go home when they've been rejected. They don't have to be forcibly deported because they didn't just come here uninvited anyway. And then they come here and they're successful. Asians in this country do remarkably well. Chinese especially. But also people like Nigerians. I mean, one thing that's really interesting that Thomas Sowell points out in Wealth, Poverty and Politics, that 83% of Nigerians in America have a degree. That's amazing. 83%. I mean, this is an elite class of people that are coming over from Nigeria to America. And we've got a lot of well-educated Nigerians here. It just seems to be a cultural thing. They're particularly enterprising, it seems. Which is great. Same with Hindus. They seem to be particularly enterprising. Indians, they're very enterprising. Chinese, very enterprising. Get along. They work very hard. They understand. They have kind of inherited the Protestant work ethic that we've just let fall by the wayside, apparently. But at least someone's doing some hard work. I appreciate that. Unfortunately, illiterate migrants who come over en masse because Merkel's offering them free money have to be turned away. They're not, even then, and even then, this is assuming that they are refugees, and we don't have any proof that these people are actual refugees. But again, I mean, some of them are, obviously, but the ones we're talking about in this article, who fucking knows? Anyway, Miss Morgan wrote, across the UK there are 217 upper tier and unitary local authorities with responsibility for children's services, meaning that the 400 Dubs children don't even equate to 2 unaccompanied children per local authority. Okay, but it's the beginning. I hate to say it is the thin edge of the wedge, though, isn't it? I mean, once we start taking some, where does this stop? Are you saying literally we will only ever take the 3,000 children that you want let in? Is that it? And no other children are going to come? No. And I say again, children are going to come. No other people are going to come. This is it. This is just the number, right? 3,000. That's it for all time. Okay? I would agree to that. I would say, yeah, you know what? Okay, fine. We take 3,000 quote-unquote refugee children, and then we take no more, and that's our job done. I would agree to that in a heartbeat. If we could guarantee that would be it. But it's not going to be it. And I tell you what, I'm not even really that bothered about immigration myself. I mean, I don't actually live in a portion of the country that is too badly affected by immigration. In fact, where I live, it actually does seem to be a net boon because I get to enjoy the benefits of immigration without the problems of immigration. And so, because the immigration numbers to Swindon they're moderate, but they're not very high, and it's not causing a huge amount of trouble. And there's a remarkable amount of integration in Swindon because, well, people are poor, and the poor don't really have time for that kind of thing. But yeah, it's really not something that's affecting me, but I can see that it's affecting my fellow countrymen to the point where, I mean, it is their number one issue because it's causing them so many problems. And it's a specific kind of immigration. They're not complaining about the Hindus or the Chinese or the Sikhs or the Australians or the Poles even. Although the Poles are edging them out in jobs. I mean, one of the things the working class don't like are the Polish builders because they come over and take their jobs. They actually do. They build things that could have been built by native British workers. Not good for the British workers, but, you know, the capitalist class, the bourgeoisie, they don't care. They're the ones who benefit. They get to see nice things built and they get things cheaper. Not their problem. And that's what, I swear to God, that's what all of this is based on. Not my fucking problem. Well, I'm sorry, it is my problem if half of my country is infuriated by what's been going on and will vote for almost anything to get it to stop, even though I'm not personally affected by it. It's still my problem because they will end up voting. So we have to understand what they're voting for and we have to understand what it is they want. And they want just a cut-off of immigration, and they're right to ask for it. After all that's happened, I can see why they don't want immigrants. And it's not just, again, it's not even just immigrants. It's immigration from Muslim countries, which is why almost everyone in the West, the majority opinion, by a huge margin as well, almost 2-1 in the West, especially on the continent and in America, and less so in Britain, 45% in Britain support, with something like 38-40% in opposition. But most of the time, in Europe and in America, it's almost 2-1 in favour of banning people from Muslim countries from immigrating to the West. And it's because they have long experience of Muslims living in the West. It hasn't been good. It just hasn't. It hasn't turned out well for the many, many, many thousands and thousands of people who have been raped and murdered. And then all of the other cultural issues that come along with it. Like, oh my fucking God, like the Muslim gangs, the violence, the territorialness of Islam, the in-group, out-group dichotomy it fosters. You know, you don't get this with other ethnic minority groups. This is something ideological to Islam. And people don't want to admit it. They don't want to pretend. They want to pretend it's not true. Well, okay, well, here we go. This is why we're getting Brexit. This is why you got Trump. This is why you're getting Le Pen. And now you're sitting there going, yeah, but the children. Well, there are children all over the world that are starving. You don't care about those. You only care about these because why? Because why? Probably political point scoring, to be honest. I wonder if Morgan is looking to unseat Theresa May. And if she is, what she needs to do is get behind the anti-immigrant, pro-Brexit stance. I don't know what her stance is. I should have checked. But she said the decision to limit the Dub scheme and other government policies would lead to a cumulative impact on future decisions of voters on whether to back the Conservatives. Yeah, they're going to get more. You understand that Theresa May's popularity has gone up. YouGov did a poll a few months ago where she was on +5 and Corbyn was on like, I don't know, -60 or something. And the other day they did another one and she was on +8. she's just getting more popular. And these people are totally out of touch. They don't understand. I think what I hate about most of this is just like, it's just rhetoric. Britain has always been a global, outward-facing country, as well as being compassionate to those who need our help most. Alright, well, I mean, the people who need your help at the moment are the people in your own country who need you to stop being honest about the problems they're having. I'm just saying, until we fix these problems, we're not going to be able to fix other people's problems. There's no point destroying ourselves in the attempt to be like pathologically altruistic. The Conservative Party now needs to demonstrate that the combination of our approach to issues such as the Dubs children, the Labour peer behind the child refugee scheme, Alf Dubs, has delivered a petition with 50,000 names to Downing Street calling for it to be extended. He branded the government's limits of the initiative to be a very shabby cop-out. Before she became Prime Minister, back in 2002, May made a controversial speech warning that the party's reputation was in tatters. Miss May said at the time, "Our base is too narrow and so occasionally are our sympathies. You know what some people call us, the nasty party." As I said, they've always had this reputation. "I know that's unfair, you know that's unfair, but it's the people out there we need to convince, and we can only do that by avoiding behaviour and attitudes that play into the hands of our opponents. We need to reach out to all areas of our society." All areas of our society. You're using May's own words in an attempt to damn her when they in fact vindicate her. Yes, she is. I mean, it's actually amazing how the Tories have turned this around, and it's all on the back of Brexit. And on the back of the promise that they'll reduce immigration. You know what? They didn't. They didn't even reduce immigration. They promised they would, and they fucking haven't. All they need to do is say it, and people will be like, oh, thank God, something's going to be done. You know, it releases the pressure valve, at least that it's being admitted that this is a problem. And there was another thing the other day, that Brexit is probably going to reduce immigration by a very tiny amount. I mean, A, that's better than nothing. And B, most of the immigration that is actually a problem to Britain hasn't come from outside of Europe. So that's not a big deal. But there is the ever-lingering fear of Merkel just letting God knows how many millions of people into Germany, then being given German passports and becoming EU citizens, and then being able to just travel here if they want. We're not in the Schengen area, so they need a passport to do it, but once they have a German passport, they can come. That's just the way it is. And people know this. People know that the more migrants that Merkel lets in, the more we will end up getting. So, I mean, there is the advantage. That is one push out to get out of the EU on the immigration front. But it's not the solution. And, I mean, the solution is to have a much stricter immigration vetting process. It's got to happen. We can't take in the world's poor. We're not America. We don't have a massive empty continent. We just can't do this. I can't believe I have to say it.